identity crisis thing started for me. It was back in the 80s, because back then I had been a superhero. My superpower was that I experienced no feelings. And at the time I was seeing a therapist, and not because I had any problems. Believe me, when you experience no feelings, you've got this built-in mechanism for having no problems. And so I was seeing a therapist because I was curious, kind of the way Peter Parker would be curious, or Wonder Woman might wonder. And so I found myself, the therapist actually said I needed to go to group therapy. So I found myself one Saturday afternoon sitting on the floor of her office with 11 other strangers in a circle, waving my hand, volunteering to go next. And Steve, the lead therapist there, passed by everybody else and zeroed in on me, obviously looking for a frightened new person. And so in no time, I'm in this heart-pounding conversation with Steve. And it's because he's asked me a series of questions that have sucked me right into talking about my greatest fears. You know, my worst fear in life. And at the time, for me, it was all about connecting with people. It was all about hugging, actually, and this non-romantic interpersonal touch. And it was 1985. I was 27 years old. And I had seen this kind of sort of genuine interaction between people out in the world. And I was kind of confused, and I wondered, why is this something that seems to be such a normal part of life for everybody else? And so as I was talking to Steve, I had this question that I was dying to ask him, but I was afraid to, because I was pretty sure it was stupid. I was stupid that I didn't know the answer to this question. But it was a perfectly formed question sitting squarely on the tip of my tongue, completely ready to be conveyed, while Steve and I talked about everything else. And I saw in my mind my unresponsive, mute, disapproving mom and my impatient dad saying in my head, do whatever the hell you want. And then I hear this little squeaky, whispery voice, mine, asking Steve the question. So, how old do you have to be to hug? And I heard the circle get really quiet. And I know everybody else knows the answer to this thing. And Steve says, well, how old do you think you have to be? And I say, well, my grandparents are about 80, and they hug me every time I see them, so is that it, about 80? And, you know, as soon as I say it, I know it's wrong. I just don't get the rules. And Steve says, come here, come sit with me. And he wants me to sit in front of him in this circle, kind of facing into the circle. And he says, you don't have to wait until you're 80. We can do this right now. And he puts his arms around me and, does a hug and says, can you feel that? And I say, not really. And then there's this murmur in the crowd, and I can tell, it's pretty obvious. Somehow, somewhere along the line, I have shut down the feelings in my body, and I've shut down the feelings in my heart. And now everybody can see it, myself included. And so Steve kind of hugs me harder and says, what about that? And I'm like, no. And then he puts a vice grip on me. He puts all the force he can behind this thing. He's kind of a big guy. His face is turning purple, and people are literally laughing out loud because my arms are plastered to my side, and I'm being crushed by a man, and I'm waiting expectantly to feel it. And he says, what about that? I'm like, maybe. So then he pounds me up and down on the floor in front of him, pile driver style, and says, you can feel that, can't you? And I said, I think so. And I went home, and I was really confused. And I mean, that's how it started. I discovered on a Saturday afternoon that my superpowers were a sham. Yeah, I was a superhero, but it was turning out that therapy was kryptonite. I'd shut down my feelings, and I wasn't really living life. But it's been a long time since then. That was a long time ago. Now, I am a superhero again. I have new superpowers. My new superpowers are that I do have feelings, and I'm not afraid to share them right now with you. Thank you.
Jane, everybody. Great job.